Hey, Kate, how you going?
I'm good, Sam. How are you going?
Yeah, I'm going really well. Look, considering that this is the week of Magic Round, I got myself a magic trick for us tonight. Do you want to see it?
I'd love to. Go ahead.
All right, then. In about 5 seconds, I'm going to make the inaugural NRLW Cowboys head coach appear underneath this. 3, 2, 1. Alakazam, Kate. What do you reckon?
Amazing, Sam. You never cease to amaze me. Look at that.
Hi, Ben. I'll get to everyone. We'll start things off in just a second. Thank you, guys. Stick around.
One road in, one road out. One creek runs top down, north to south. The way it's rolling, where it's going, lets us know where we come from. It's in our blood, let me tell you something. Yeah, it runs like a 67 Chevy. Yeah, it runs like a river, slow and steady. Keeps it blue in the car in the small town, smaller Friday night alma mater. If you ask down here in the holler, yeah, it runs in the water. Bring the dust, bring the drought. What's running here ain't running out. All that mud is thick as sludge. It's busy pumping through these veins. We've been saved, been baptized. Took a bite of the apple and didn't die. But on my breakout, bless this place. That's just the way it runs. Like a 67 Chevy. Yeah, it runs like a river, slow and steady. Keeps it blue in the car in the small town, smaller Friday night alma mater. If you ask down here in the holler, yeah, it runs in the Past every rock and every mile, ain't it wild how it runs like a 67 Chevy. Yeah, it runs like a river, slow and steady. Keeps it blue in the car in the small town, smaller Friday night alma mater. If you ask down here in the holler, yeah, it runs in the
Howdy, everyone. It's Sam. Welcome back to the Wobble and Joy Sports channel. If you're new around here, I hope I can get you to consider liking the content and subscribing to the channel. But if you are a regular around these here parts, thank you very much for the continuous support. I am joined by a couple of very special people. First of all, I'd like to reintroduce everybody to my mate, CowboyKate. Thank you so much for your time again this evening. How the hell are you?
I'm very good. Thanks, Sam. That video, just shut up and take my money. I'm going to all the games. I need all the merch. I've got my NRLW membership. I am just so ready to go. That was awesome, Sam.
Thank you very much. And the guest that we have this evening, you all can see it, but allow me to introduce him properly. He is a player of over 280 first-class rugby league games, and now he is killing it in the coaching arena these days. I would like to thank you so much for his time. Thank him so much for his time this evening. His name is Mr. Ben Jeffries. Thank you so much for your time, mate. It's an absolute privilege to have you on. Thank you.
No, pleasure, Sam. Evening.
Awesome. And guys, if you're just dribbling in or if you're coming in and out, if you'd like to drop any questions, hold on to them up until the end of the stream and we'll shoot them off and keep things obviously respectful in the chat as well, as I'm sure you do, you do, guys. So let's get stuck straight into it. Ben, you grew up in Forster, New South Wales, man. And I'd like to ask just simply first, who did you grow up? Who did you support growing up? And who were some of your favourite players that really solidified to you that rugby league is the greatest game of all, man?
So I grew up in a small town called Forster, as you mentioned. It's about 2 hours north of Newcastle. So I've got a pretty soft spot for Newcastle, where I started probably my rugby league journey as in the Jersey flag stages there. But when I was growing up, my grandmother, she brainwashed me to be a Parramatta supporter. So yeah, I was born in the 80s. So that was their dominant period. My idols probably were Peter Sterling initially, and then as I got a bit older and moved into Newcastle through their pathways, Andrew Johns became very much prominent in, I suppose, in mine and every other kid in the Hunter. So.
And even though you're born in the 80s, mate, I was born in the 90s, and you're still looking younger than I am, Ben. 100%, bro. You were signed by the Newcastle Knights in the late 1990s, man, or mid to late 1990s. Was that before or after the club's first premiership, and you got to train with some of the big dogs of the Newcastle Knights at the time?
So 97 was when they won their first grand final. I came in the year after. So you can imagine probably the excitement after that, going around the club. So, so I had 2 years basically there in under 19s Jersey flag back in those days. We didn't get to train too much with the older boys, but by the back end of the second year, when Andrew Johns went to, I suppose, State of Origin, I was called into the old reserve grade. That's where I did my trade. So, basically it was two years of fun and enjoyment, learning my trade, applying my trade, which led me on to other pathways then.
And in 1998, well, you must have done something bloody right, hey? Because ever since then, you've been involved in rugby league at a high level consistently, and you were rewarded for a really good Jersey flag year by being selected to be an Australian schoolboy in 1998. You travelled to New Zealand, you toured New Zealand, you walked away with a 3 or 2-1 record. And some of the names that you were hanging out with at the time have gone on to be elite legends of the game. Case in point, you've got Mark Gasnier that you spent some time with just by looking up things. Who were some of the players, if you can recall, who were some of the players that really stuck out to you in that Australian schoolboys team that you were with, and you thought, that guy, I'm bloody happy he's on my side?
Yeah, I was pretty fortunate in that 98 year where we played Australian schoolboys with someone like Mark Gasnier, Luke Burt, Mark Riddell, really good mate called Michael Korkitis, who I spent the majority of my English career with. Who else? Alan Tung, Justin Hodges.
Tungy.
I think it was Tamana Tahu as well, I think. Honestly, when you look back at that 20-man squad that went across there, I'd say probably 80% of us went on and played over 10 years, whether it was in Super League or NRL. So, yeah, it was a pretty good crop, to be honest.
Yeah, that's amazing. You made your debut at the Dragons in 2000 and a year later moved on to the West Tigers for a couple of seasons. And at the end of 2002, you made an enormous decision to move overseas and play in the Super League for Wakefield and Bradford. And that was until the end of 2012. So you're over there for a really long time. You made your way back to Australia at the end of 2012. Can I ask how different league was in the UK to Australia even back then?
Yeah, probably the professionalism. There's probably still the gap of the professionalism from Australia to England. But yeah, I originally went for 3 years and never come home until I retired from professional rugby league. So I'd spent 10 years, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I just went over there and fell in love with the game. I remember watching Kangaroo Tours, Challenge Cup finals, and I fell in love with England Rugby League for whatever reason. And once I got over there and got amongst it, I just really loved it, enjoyed it. Got to travel the world. We're going to pre-season camps where we're going to Spain, France, Portugal. You don't do that here. So
So different.
So the life experiences I had over there were, priceless, which I recall all the time now, and it actually made me who I am today, to be honest.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, it's a little bit different, isn't it, when you're so close to everything in Europe? Over here, like you said, you just can't get that sort of access to life experiences or other countries and other cultures. So that's pretty cool, and that's probably one thing that they've got going for going for them over there. That's for sure. Can you tell us a little bit about your pathway into coaching? In 2014, you were an assistant coach for the Knights SG Ball Cup, and that side made the finals that year. You moved up to North Queensland that same year, and really you haven't looked back from that moment.
Yeah.
Was coaching always something that was natural for you? Like, did you feel like it was a natural progression? How did the idea of coaching come about for you?
It was probably 2012. So last year I was playing Super League and decided to retire, and my coach at the time was Mick Potter. And he basically mentioned in a conversation, have you thought about coaching? And I was doing my coaching course at that point in time, but I basically said yes and no. I wasn't really convinced. But then once I came home, got into the pathway of the Knights, did that short-term coaching role and got the bug. And you're right. I moved to North Queensland and haven't looked back. Pretty fortunate. I've had some really good people around me to give me opportunities first and foremost, but then I've had some really good mentors who've backed me, and it's critical when you trying to get ahead in life, I suppose, in whatever you're doing. You've got people around you that are good people, but also back you and trust you.
And you spoke about some mentors. Who would be someone that you would class as a mentor who's helped you in this coaching space?
Oh, look, first and foremost, probably Mick, who basically asked the question first. I don't talk to him hell a lot anymore. No, not for any particular reason. It's just obviously live far and wide apart. But him just opening my eyes in my last 2 years of playing, I actually take some of those philosophies into coaching now. So, and then I've had a mentor called Tony Quinn, who was my NRL development regional manager. He was a real good person first and foremost, but he actually backed me to do everything I was doing in the coaching world, and I can't thank him enough for that. He's someone I talk to very regularly. And then you got someone like Mitch Constance, who worked at the QRL. He pretty much implemented me at the QAS when QAS for the females was started up in 2017. And I've been part of that pathway ever since. So I've got a very much close relationship with him, and very thankful for that relationship. And we still talk very often amongst the football world. And probably some other people like Aaron Payne, who I assisted at 20s at Cowboys. Glenn Hall, who's been my direct manager for the last 4 years until recently. There's a few other people too, but like I said, there's been many influences in my life, and including my mother and father, and I'm pretty thankful to have them around me.
It sounds like a fabulous support network, and that you've got there, people who, and it's funny, isn't it, how people that you meet, like Mick Potter, you're saying you met him such a long time ago, but he still has such a big influence on how you think about coaching and things that you take into games, game days and all of those sorts of things. So even though you don't speak to him anymore, they leave lasting impressions, even though you don't really think about it like that at the time. But many years later, you still, speaking about him on a podcast many years later, and how he's, helped shape your life. It's pretty cool, actually. You've been the face of Women's Rugby League in North Queensland since 2015, and in that year you coached the Townsville women's team and the Marlins under-14s team as well. In 2016 you were the head coach of the Queensland Murray team. Can you tell us about that time of your career and how important those women and those teams were for you in terms of progressing as a coach?
Yeah, I think when you're dealing with footballers first and foremost, but then female footballers, you're dealing with a very dynamic group, basically, because you've got mothers and young teenagers and things like that, and we are wired differently. So, but it was a really good stepping stone for me for what I'm doing right now. And basically, I treat them as people first and foremost. They're not robots. Family comes first, and school and work, and then football, because they're not full-time footballers just yet. And when I look back at those three things you just mentioned, like the under-14s Marlins team that I originally coached in 2015, that had Jasmine Peters inside it, who I've coached many times in many pathways, but she's going to don a Cowboys jersey in this season coming forward, and that's pretty cool to have that relationship with players and still have that bond and trust going forward, which is critical to get the best out of them as well.
So you did some trade in the Queensland Women's in 2018 thereabouts, Ben, and you've been plugging away as an assistant coach, and then in the late end of 2019, you were then selected to be the head coach for the women's Indigenous side. What an absolute thrill and honour that must have been for you, Ben.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Coaching, lucky enough, I was coached the Indigenous Gems the year before, and then got promoted to the All Stars head coach. Another mentor, Dean Weeders, who was a big believer in mine. We still talk. Obviously, we're going to be arch enemies very soon. Him coaching Parramatta, but. Yeah, it is a huge honour. Whenever you step into an arena when it's a elite pathway, and you're dealing with, very elite players, like it's a huge honour, and I don't take it for granted one second. And but to coach them the initial year was it's pretty special. I have a jersey pretty much wrapped up in my closet at the moment, but I intend to get it framed on the wall very, very soon. But and I've been very much trusted in that space for the last 3 years too. So, which is again very grateful, very thankful for that. And it's I suppose the friendships, the trust, the bond you build with those players that keeps them coming back and performing on a yearly basis.
And Kate, if I can just ask a question off the run sheet, just out of curiosity, Ben, you travelled to New Zealand. The entire NRL All Stars unit travelled to New Zealand for the first time this year. That must have been another incredible experience to pop onto your resume, man.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the 98 Australian Schoolboys tour we mentioned before, that's where I went to. I had to play a test match in Rotorua, so it's going back in time in some way. But I think it was awesome to take the All Stars to New Zealand. You could possibly say New Zealand's been starved of elite level football for the last 3 years. I think it has been since, unfortunately, COVID struck us. But it was awesome to take it there. I totally agree that if they even alternated it every second year there. But
hallelujah, Ben.
that's totally up to NRL, but you'd have my support because it's like the cultural stuff that was going on over there. Like it was just another level, and it was awesome to go there, experience it. I know the females and the male groups both loved it. It's a celebration of our heritage, our mob, all that sort of thing.
And after that, so 2020. So last year, 2022. What an enormous friggin' year that you had, Ben. You've signed every dotted line on the planet. All the trees have gone from the rainforest, Ben. So you signed up with. You came back to the NRL All Stars as well, and then you signed on to be the Queensland Under-19s coach in June, and unfortunately it wasn't victory. But there is a lady or a young woman that I'd like to ask you a question about. Her name is Shante Kiriaratu. She has been earmarked, labelled the next big prospect in the NRLW, and from what I have seen, albeit limited, I can't help but agree. What's your opinion on how Shante Kiriaratu goes in the NRLW, man?
Yeah, look, it will be tough, but she's got the ability and the mindset to be there for a number of years. She's probably got a 10-year career ahead of her if she wants to have it, basically.
Wow.
So, outstanding human, comes from a really good family, got really good values. In that 19s game, unfortunately, we didn't get the result we wanted, but it was, I suppose, effort areas that we look at as coaches in that game that ticked all the boxes from my point of view, and she was probably one of the standouts for us in that game. And I've got no doubt in 12 months, 2 years time, that her name will be on everyone's lips at some point.
Yep. And the other dotted line that you signed on just about was you became the head coach for the Papua New Guinean Orchids. You say that there was a bit of serendipity sort of thing when you go back to New Zealand. You went back to England to coach the Papua New Guinean side in the Rugby League World Cup, Ben. Have you had a chance to go? Did you get a chance to go to Port Moresby, for example, and check out the lay of the land, or what has that entire Papua New Guinea experience been like as the head coach, man?
Yeah, so I was pretty fortunate. I went to POM last year 3 times. I was supposed to go 4 times. I got COVID one of the times, so unfortunately, I didn't see the 4th time. But the biggest thing for me, like to go back to England and coach, was an awesome experience. But to go to POM, I believe that I had to go to POM multiple times to get in front of the females over there so they could trust me. There's no use me coaching from a distance. So as many times I could get across there, and thankful the club let me go and see the females leading into the World Cup. It was all about creating that trust and bond, as I mentioned before. That's how you try and get the best out of players. So it was an awesome experience. Like, I'm still in contact with them. Still in contact with the CEO over there. My assistant is always messaging me. In fact, I had sent some files across to her today so she can start her program basically with the females going forward. It's just that experience, that 6-7 weeks experience made me truly a better coach, better person. And I can't thank the players for first and foremost for believing in what we're trying to get across them, but the staff were outstanding. Like, every staff member we talked, they were on board with everything. They drove all the standards of values that we're trying to get across to them. And in the end, it was like a very rewarding experience because, one, they never won a game in a World Cup before, so they won 2, which meant they went to the semi-finals. And then, honestly, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it because some of the females, some of their backgrounds you would not believe, and obviously I'm not going to mention on live air, but like some of their backgrounds aren't the best, and for them to achieve what they did it's a very proud moment. But they changed the face of rugby league in Papua New Guinea for the rest of their lives, basically. So if anyone does any homework around the 2017 World Cup, they were slated big time on the social media. But by the time they walked back in from this World Cup, there was obviously still got your skepticals, but honestly, they've changed the face of female rugby league in Papua New Guinea for the rest of their lives.
Well, that's it's amazing to hear, Ben, and how lovely for you to be a part of that moment with them as well, and obviously something that you'll never forget. So congratulations. It was very exciting. I remember seeing that they got their first win and how exciting that was to see all over socials. It was fantastic. So congratulations on a wonderful Rugby League World Cup campaign. Now we want to get chatting about the Cowboys NRLW. That's, yes, I can see you, Sam. It's very, very exciting. So let's get down to business. We'll have a lot of Cowboys fans listening to this, which is exciting, and they want to know a little bit more about the team that we're putting together. But to set the scene, in the middle of June last year, the Cowboys were granted an NRLW license. Your feet had barely hit the ground after returning from the Rugby League World Cup, which we were just talking about when that announcement was made. And you were announced as the inaugural NRLW Cowboys head coach and Women's Elite Programs leader, respectively. Can you tell us what that moment was like for you and how proud you are to be a part of this new era for the Cowboys?
Yeah, it's pretty surreal. The club, unfortunately, they tried to bid for the season before, but they didn't expand it, which was all well and good. But then once we've got the decision that we were, obviously the whole of North Queensland, especially the Cowboys establishment, they couldn't be happy. And obviously myself and Anita sitting at the forefront of it, like assisting and driving it. We're pretty happy at this point. Ask me about round 6 and it might be a little bit different, but what it does is there's a true pathway now for North Queensland players to not leave home. It's basically the same thing they did 20 odd years ago for the male pathway. So what I would say is that there's a lot of young players coming through, and they've got to be patient too. It can be a long road to get to an NRL club, which I understand because I've gone through it myself as a male, and it's no different to females as well. So, but if they want it, it's there to take it if they want it. So, and 3 years time, they could be professional rugby league players. So given the salary cap for the next 5 years, and by the end of that, they pretty much, you could say, they're nearly full-time players.
Thank you. That sounds fantastic. I like the sound of that indeed. Let's hope that it's on the cards. You just mentioned your assistant coach, Anita. Can you tell us a little bit more about her and what quality she brings to the assistant coaching role that complements your coaching style?
So Anita's the head of NRW, so she's not a coach. She basically.
Oh, pardon me.
That's all right. She looks over the whole program. So everything that goes in behind the scenes, the little things that you don't see, that's Anita's role. And I can't thank her enough for what she's done so far. And we've got a programs coordinator assistant in our pathway now, Trinity Kent, who's pretty much unseen, very much like Anita in some way, and they're working really hard behind the scenes at the moment. And I suppose Tammy Quirk, who's come on as a welfare manager, she's trying to get personnel ready for basically when they transition up here as well. So it is a massive job to transition 28 players, because the thing is, in North Queensland, obviously everyone just doesn't live in Townsville. They live in Cairns, Mackay, so they've got to move. So it's a huge job logistically behind the scenes. So at the moment, we're pretty much sitting at 27 out of 28 players signed. But obviously, clubs strategically releasing them at the moment. But the transition now is basically obviously those contracts are signed now. It's about the next month of trying to get everyone into place.
Yeah. And that's probably something that's unique to North Queensland as well, because the Sydney teams, depending on who they've signed, don't have that sort of challenge, do they?
Absolutely not. So, look, you've got players going in and out of different teams in Sydney, more so than any, but they'd have very minimal relocations compared to our team, I'd say. Canberra would be very similar. That's part and parcel of recruiting as well, but it's very important, the people behind the scenes, like they're really good at what they do. And yeah, like I said, I can't thank them enough so far. What's transpired.
And we know that a lot of the information about the NRLW season has taken a long time to get out to the public, and even amongst players, because of the discussions with the players' agreement that was going on or is still going on. Is it actually wrapped up and finalised? Can you give us an update, or is there still some things that are outstanding in that space? Obviously, contracts and things like that, like you said, have been able to go out now, but is there other things that haven't quite been finalised with the players' agreement for the NRLW?
Yeah, I don't know the full ins and outs of it, but we're at the point where we've got interim contracts, basically, and I think there's only a couple of things to be ticked off, but basically it's pretty much done and dusted. Like all their contracts, like I mentioned, are done basically in the interim. So, like as I mentioned, we've got 27 out of 28 done now. So, yeah, so I don't see any hiccups with that going forward as we speak. It's just when they transition, it's more the teething problems around relocating them. Have they got everything they need? All that sort of thing. So this is all new to our club, but we're pretty fortunate. We've got assistant coach coming who's been part of the NRLW since day dot, and she understands the whole demographic, logistical, all that sort of thing. So she'll be a huge help behind the scenes with Tammy on that front before we get on the field, and obviously help me try and get them to play the best football they can.
That's sensational, man. And so the draw was released last week. What's your reaction to the draw if you've had a fair dink, if you've been able to have the time to have a fair dink and look at it? Because in my opinion, I think while it's not the toughest, I do think we copped a bit of the short straw just quietly, Ben. And for example, we've only got 3 pure home games up in Townsville this season, and the rest are being spread out amongst Brisbane and Gold Coast, and then we're away for most of the other time. Is that something that you were alerted to before the draw was released last week, or did that come as a surprise to you?
Oh, look, internally they send out what you call a draft draw. We didn't know who was playing when or whatever, but basically they just give us an idea that we'll get 3 home games and the rest will be on the road, basically. Yeah, they've tried to even it out, and you'll never, ever get everyone happy and things like that. So I'm not someone who complains a hell of a lot. You get dealt the cards, and how you react and how you prepare is what you can control, basically. So the female game is still in infancy as well, and they want to promote it as much as they can and things like that. The double headers seem to work in the female game. I'm sure it'll work in the male game too, but it doesn't necessarily work like that. We only get sort of like magic round, which is a huge weekend coming up. But basically, we can only control what we can control. So obviously, the first game we have here is a double header with the males, which is the us versus Broncos, which is going to be huge. But yeah, like we knew we were going to have to play everyone once, basically. Yeah. So it wasn't a surprise. It was just when and where you played each team. So in the end, if you want to be successful, you've got to beat the best. So yeah, our job is to get them ready in 7 weeks' time.
Yeah, and I suppose travel isn't anything new really for Cowboys players, really. So I probably do the most travel of any team in the comp, apart from New Zealand, I suppose, who literally come to another country to play. But yeah, I think the draw was not so bad, but that double header against Brisbane, like you said, I just can't wait for that one, because that will be an absolute sellout crowd, and I think it'll really give North Queenslanders and everyone that travels to come to all the Cowboys games a really good look at this squad for the first time, and it's going to be huge. I just literally can't wait for it. It's going to be massive. I don't quite think, it's just all, like you're saying, so brand new for the club, and that moment right there is just going to be something that will go down in history books. A doubleheader against the Broncos for the men and women's team is going to be unreal. Now, you've said that there's did you say 27 out of 28 signings already?
We've signed 27 out of 28 players. Obviously, as I mentioned, the club strategically released them. So to be fully transparent, they won't release names basically yesterday, for example, because it's the male team list day, so it sort of gets lost in translation. So what we're trying to do is, for example, the North Queensland players, basically trying to give them their own spotlight. So a lot of these players have lived out of suitcase for the last 3-4 years and gone off to other clubs and played. We want to give them their spotlight that they deserve. So, obviously there's girls itching out there to post everything on Instagram and Facebook and things like that, which I totally understand and I can empathise with. And we're trying to get them out as quick as we can. So, like I said, to be transparent, it is strategic when clubs release names.
Yep, that's fair enough. I think it's fair to have them stand in a moment of their own, like you said, and not have it clash and get lost in other news of the day. Now, look, we have to ask you about this because there was one signing that I think lots of North Queensland Cowboy fans thought was coming our way, and turns out it didn't, and that was Romy Teitzel. Woke up one morning and saw that she'd signed with the Broncos, and I know there was a few people that were shocked about that. Not much of that was made, nothing really in the media was made of that, but it was something that caught Cowboys fans' eyes. So is there any indication as to why Romy didn't sign with the club this year?
First and foremost, it's a business. When you're negotiating contracts, it's a business. We had a strategic plan from the get-go, which Michael Luck and Anita were across, and the club backed what we were trying to do. And then basically it went down for 2 months negotiating back and forth, and unfortunately there was no agreement between both parties. So that's how it eventuated. Unfortunate, but fortunate. So we've got a really good back rower coming that hasn't been announced yet. So she's a good young female, wants to learn, wants to be a Cowboy. And then with Romy, she gets our best wishes. She thought her best opportunity was to play the Broncos. So no hard feelings from us. But yeah, in saying that too, it is hard. It's when you're trying to fit 24 pieces into a jigsaw puzzle, you could say. And then it's not particular to Romy's situation, but if you've allocated X amount to certain positions, and if that keeps going up, then it comes a detriment to your salary cap. So, and I'm not going to beat around the bush. Your 1, 6, 7, 9, they command good money because they're your influencers. So that's how we've constructed our squad. And then basically the NQ players were priority first and foremost. Then pivotal players like Kira Dibb, Fran Goldthorpe were identified as influential players, and then the rest of the squad have been built around those particular people.
I'll tell you another player that the entire roster, I reckon, is being built around. And please excuse your eardrums, but I've got to ring this. I've got to ring that cowbell, man. North Queensland signed Emma Mantleman, the inaugural player, possibly the captain or will be the captain of the side. I have been the biggest fan. I think a lot of people absolutely adore the work that Emma Mantle gets through. Going through the BMD Premiership stats this season alone, she's only missed 3 or 4 tackles this season. She's ran the length of the freaking straight as well throughout the freaking year as well. I am so excited that Emma Mantleman is going to be a part of this inaugural Cowboys team. And being that she was the first signing as well, if you don't mind elaborating more on why she was the first signing for the Cowboys NRLW side.
Oh, look, Emma has been a pivotal person through this pathway for the last several years. She's gone through the Marlins pathway and obviously went into Gold Stars pathway, pivotal player. The thing is with Emma, like she's a competitor. She hates losing. Simple as that. She's pretty hard on herself. She's very black and white, and I'm very fortunate that I've got a really good trust and bond with Emma. Same as very similar to Shania Power, Jazz Peters, who I've coached for a period of time. The best thing for me, I'm excited that I get to coach them for a long period of time now. I've actually never had the chance to coach them for a long period of time because I've just come in and fortunately do these one-off, Origin or All-Stars, Marlins gigs. And then that's where I've created those relationships with them. And then they know I've constantly watched them for years. So, but yeah, in all honesty, that was one player we were never letting go. So, so yeah, like as I mentioned before, 9, 6, 7, 1, they're very pivotal players in your group, and everyone else is quite valuable too. But they're your influences.
Speaking of valuable players, Tallulah Tillett was a name that I was very excited to see that the Cowboys were signing. She's obviously very involved with the club on a community level as well. She's a wonderful role model for young kids and is very loved up here. And in a really great full circle moment for the club, her dad in 1995 was part of, the inaugural men's team. So now she's part of the inaugural women's team. It's pretty awesome. So what was it like when you let Tallulah know that she was actually going to be in a Cowboys jersey this year? Because I spoke to her last year and that was her goal for this year, was just to get her hands on a Cowboys jersey. So how awesome was that to let her know?
Oh yeah, look, I'll give you an inkling into Tallulah, like outstanding human, does anything for anyone else. So she's a pretty unselfish sort of person. But I remember the day that the club got the license, she was actually in the gym. And we went down and said the license has been granted. She was in tears. So that pretty much sums it up. So she is a student of the game. She likes to learn. She's really good at taking on some constructive criticism on them. Sometimes I am hard on her. It's to prepare her to go to the next level. Yeah, like she loves being out in the community. She loves representing the club. She loves representing her people. When she gets in that all-star space, she prides herself on representing herself, her family, and a mob, distinction and integrity. So, yeah, she's going to be a pivotal person going forward for us as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned Frances Goldthorpe, who you've nicked from the UK. Can you tell us just a little bit about why Frances in particular was on your radar and why you have stolen her from the UK? There was a couple of people on UK Twitter who are absolutely devastated that she is leaving. So happy for her, but devastated that they're not going to be able to see her play anymore, which I thought really spoke volumes, about obviously the talent that she and then Kira Dibb as well, who you mentioned before. That one was, I think, an absolute gun signing. So what was it about those two players in particular made you chase after them and get a name to paper?
Yeah, so with Francesca's signing, I watched it during the World Cup, and every coach has different philosophies, what they like, what they don't like, things like that. So with Fran, she just loves the ball in hand. She loves getting the ball in hand and running. And our game is simple sometimes. And when you look back at every game, I talk to our analysts at times about this. Basically, whoever makes the most meters wins. Basically, that's how it works. So, but she's got more to her game than just running. So, she's a dynamic fullback who has a pass option but a run option. She has no fear, and for someone who's 20 years of age, played 8 test matches for her country, dual international, just recently come off the back of a under-20s England rugby union tour in France, played in Scotland, multi-sported person, so plays cricket as well. So statistics show that your multi-sport people are generally better people and better players as well. So there is a bit of a strategic thing behind it. And lastly, she's a good person. Simple as that. At the Cowboys, when we recruit, we first and foremost they've got to be good people. So when you walk through that door, manners and appreciation, gratefulness, all that sort of thing comes first. So. And then if you move on to Kira, like Kira's done it all. She's played for a country. She's played Origin, played at All-Stars. And that's where I basically met Kira 2 years ago in the All-Star space when we first selected Kira. That campaign, what she went through was disgraceful in some way, but how she carried herself through that campaign speaks volumes of who she is, what she's about. She's very driven. She's very articulate, speaks very well. And she has every credential that you want in a half. Kicking game, runs the ball well. She's big in stature too. When you get in a room, you'd actually think she's probably a forward because she's quite tall. But also a goal kicker, and she's won a premiership too. So and that's the thing with these two players, that they bring experience. They've been on the world stage. So, and Fran has won a Challenge Cup and 2 Super League titles already. So these two players bring enormous experience to this team, basically.
Oh, my head absolutely exploded when Kira Dibb signed up for the North Queensland Cowboys. Like, I just did not anticipate that. That was a huge surprise in amongst the NRLW community for sure, man. And I want to touch on a few more players, if you don't mind. You've spoken at length about Jasmine Peters as well. She missed half the season so far this year, and she came back, and she's just hit the ground running, man. She's been really good for the Mackay Cutters this season, and evidence of that is that they're playing the semi-finals this weekend, or preliminary final, as it were. Speaking of BMD Premiership players as well, Shania Power, man, she was the try scorer in that Gold Stars Premiership victory last season. Absolutely unbelievable. And by reports this year, even reading what you've said about her and reading up on what she's done, Shania Power, Ben, is absolutely smashing it in 2023 and is a huge chance of becoming the BMD Premiership Player of the Year.
Yeah, I think the last time I read the toll of the player of the tournament or of the BMD Premiership, before it went behind closed doors, she was actually leading it. So, and obviously I watch her game every week to give her some feedback before they get into this space. And yeah, she's playing very well. So both Jazz and Shania, they're in very good places at the moment. So it's really critical to understand that when players are really happy off the field, it normally transfers onto the field. So that's part of my coaching philosophy. As long as if they're happy off the field, it normally transfers onto the field. So they're both in very good spots at the moment. They're happy. So and I'm happy how they're playing. Jazz has come back from surgery. So after the All-Stars game, she had surgery on her wrist or her hand. She's came back really well. So very happy with her. She's getting involved a hell of a lot, playing fullback at the moment. But she'll move into the outside backs once we get into camp, basically, with Fran identified as our fullback. So both players are really in really good shape. Shania's actually our most capped NQ player. So she's out of our current group playing open women's. She's the only one that's ever played Origin, basically. So, and then a four-time All-Star. And Jazz sits just behind Shania in being a three-time All-Star. So there's more All-Stars to come, basically. And when this side finally gets announced, the whole group, like, they are very much connected as a group too. A lot of them have played with each other. Even the ones that have already been announced. So someone like Emma Menzelman, Jazz Peters, Jessica Reeves, they've played Origin at under-18s level together. So they know each other already. So this has been part of the recruitment phase as well.
And just quickly speaking on Jessica Reeves, there was the announcement, I think a fortnight ago now, where the announcement was made that a quartet of Papua New Guinean Orchids players had been signed up. And everybody was saying before the signings were going to be announced that we're all going to go down the England road. We're going to go down the New Zealand road. Well, my mate Ben Jeffries decided to use his Papua New Guinean Orchid connections and pinch a few Papua New Guinean weapons, bro. And one of them being Ese Banu. Ese Banu has got some serious hands on her as well. Like, not only is she a blockbuster runner, she's got some fast hands on her, bro. At a moment's notice, she can just flick it off to the left or the right. But she had one of the best runs I've ever seen at the start of the season, where she ran for like 60 meters or so. I was at that game. I dropped my beer. It was, Ese Banu, I'm a massive fan of, man. And she obviously destroyed it the year before with Wynnum Manly as well. So, Ese Banu and the Papua New Guinean Orchids, you must have been really pleased that you pulled off that coup of those 4 players to come in and be a part of the Cowboys inaugural team.
Yeah, look, it's like I said, the World Cup campaign was very rewarding on multiple fronts. And, you, like I said, you create that bond and trust with players. And those 4 that were on that tour, and the whole group, the resilience they had to show, being away from home for 6-7 weeks, and understand how to prepare as an elite footballer, because they were pretty much elite footballers. They were there to play football, so they weren't working. Their job, or their so-called job, was to play football. So all 4 of them, outstanding people, human beings first and foremost. For SA last year, she moved away from Tully, being a North Queenslander, moved away from Tully, went to Brisbane, did it all herself, basically, obviously with support, but that made her, basically. And that's why she got on that tour, basically. She took herself out of the comfort zone. When coaches talk about the comfort zone, sometimes players have got to get out of the comfort zone to find themselves and be better people. So and that was me. That was me years ago going to England. I went away and found myself, basically. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but for SAs, it has. And someone who's signed at the club, China Pilata, is very similar boat. She pretty much rang just before Christmas, said, I need a change, want to leave Brisbane. So if you come up here, get out of your comfort zone, try your hand, I'm sure you'll be fine. And that's another one who's played in that under-18s Queensland team back in the day with Emma and Jazz and Jess. She's proving herself to be arguably one of our best players in the Cutters format this year as well. So.
Oh, and she's got a story to tell. She returned from an ACL injury herself, and China Pilata, man, isn't she a bloody go-getter as well? So just before we're going to start winding things down now, Ben, but just a couple of just general play rugby league questions that I'd like to ask you, and Kate will get in on the action in just a minute as well. I want to talk to you about the current controversies that are going on in the men's game, and whether or not you're fearful or if you're concerned on how they'll bleed into the NRLW, and one of them being probably on a lesser scale, the hair pulling. The Newcastle Knights have been involved in a couple of them in 2 weeks. I don't think there's been one in about a year or so, but like just the hair pulling at the moment. The ruling is that, well, not the ruling, but the consensus seems to be that if you go for the tackle, even if you accidentally pull on it, it's going to be blown a penalty. Is that something that you're in agreement with, or would you like to see that hair pull be pulled up or play on?
Oh, look, in the female game, it happens every now and then, but whether it's in the male or female game, honestly, I don't think it's intentional. So I think Luai his hair was pulled a couple of weeks ago. I don't think it was intentional. But basically, he got past the play and he was just trying to grab hold of anything to pull him back. Yeah. So I honestly don't think it's intentional, and it is what it is. Like, if someone pulls their hair and they get penalised, well, they put their hand on them basically in the wrong spot. So as I referred to back before, sometimes you can't control certain things. I can't control that. It's just ideally it doesn't happen, but it's never intentional for me. I've never ever seen someone dead set pull someone's hair.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other controversy or the controversial tackles going on at the moment, the hip drop tackle, the NRLW defensively, at least from what I've seen, in my opinion, I may be wrong. They're a lot different. That defensively mindset. It's a lot more of a cleaner game, and in some matches, it's bloody brilliant and a lot better. There are a lot of games that are better than the men's competition. But are you at all concerned about the hip drop controversy that's going on at the moment as well, Ben?
Yeah, obviously there's some really concerning injuries coming out of it, and they're obviously trying to outlaw it. And look, it's how the referees perceive it on the day, and obviously we'll do a lot of defensive technique work. Hopefully we don't get in. We'll minimise those incidents from our point of view. You're right though. In the female game, it's not as wrestle orientated. It'll come in for sure. It's not, but it is a lot cleaner in some way. But it will come in at some point. But I'm happy that they're eliminating certain things out of the game more for safety reasons more than anything. So it's a contact sport, and sometimes you just react, and it's an instinctive reaction, and you can't. I don't think many things are intentional. So you get the odd one where someone twists their ankle when they shouldn't, which is it's not good. But pretty much a lot of things in our game are very instinctive reaction stuff, and it happens. But if you teach them good technique and things like that, hopefully it minimises all these little things that are going on in the game at the moment.
Ben, do you think that in the lead up to round one, I don't know if this is a thing, would head coaches be contacting referees and asking, things they might be looking for? Because at the moment, seeing a lot of things in the men's game, like, tackles on kickers and things like that are being penalised, and there's a lot of argument around whether things should or shouldn't be penalties on at the moment. Is that the sort of thing you would speak about in advance, so you could attack your training in a certain way, knowing that penalties might be pulled if it's seen as discretion on the field?
Yeah,
Are coaches looking for that sort of feedback now, even in the men's game, to how they can change what they're doing at training? Because I feel like tackles on things like that, it's always been in the game, but this year in particular, it's a very slight touch, and they're pulling penalties for. So, something that you would look at closer to the start of the rounds.
For me, not necessarily. We'll try, and the three coaches we have, we'll try and educate them as much as we can, and if you find certain clips where you can sort of educate your players, what do you think of this clip, and go, well, if you did this, you would have got away with it, but if you did do the result of this person doing this action has created a penalty. So it's trying to educate the players on what's good practice and what's not. For example, they're protecting the kickers now, which I agree with in some way. Obviously being an ex-halfback, I've never got that sort of protection back in the day. But it's about when you're putting kick pressure on, obviously you need to hit them as soon as they're kicking the ball. Otherwise, it's pretty much a penalty these days, or wrap your arms. But if you can be it's teaching the players to be in their eye line. If you're in their eye line, you're actually creating some pressure on them. So just little things like that. I won't say no, but in my whole short-term coaching career, I've never rang the referee's boss and said anything. What about this ref? What about this decision? In the end, I can't control it. It's gone. Yeah. So, but as I mentioned, you could, I suppose, educate your players going forward. If you had an incident in the game before, try and rectify it by giving them some vision and getting them to come up with a solution, opposed to breathing down the referees' backs probably.
And can I ask, in terms of the women's season being obviously much shorter than the men's season, is there a discussion that happens about sin binning and how many weeks you might get if you did do something that was looked after the game, if you're put on a report, for example? Is there a standardized, this gets 1 week, this gets 2 weeks? Because it would be such a shame to see people out for 3 weeks if it's officiated the same way as the men's is, just simply because of the length of the season.
Yeah, I'd actually have to look into this to see, but I pretty much I believe it'd be just a flat, straight rule, like how it goes in the men's, will go in the females' game. So we talk about the Cowboy way here at times. We'll try and teach our players or educate our players the right way to play football, basically. We want our players to be aggressive, assertive with everything they do, that sort of thing. And then, as I mentioned, you fall back to things about educating them, and hopefully they make the right decisions under fatigue. So most of the time, it's when you're under fatigue, you make these silly errors, basically, and that's part and parcel of the game. But yeah, and then the other thing is probably the concussion thing, which is safety is paramount. So if someone gets HIA, fails their test, basically, they could miss 2 weeks, basically, of a 9-week season or 11-week season, depending how far you go. So, but that's part of roster management. That's part of longevity, all that sort of thing. So, one thing that I won't compromise is our players' safety and their welfare. If a doctor or a physio comes to me and says no good, there's no if, buts, or maybes from me. So we've got to be confident in who we've got in our squad and educating them going forward. We've got a squad that's got depth, and someone else can step in and play their part.
And so that's it. So that's it from me, Kate. Is there anything else that you wanted to lay on the table?
Not really, no. I think we've kept Ben long enough tonight. We said we were going to go. What did we say? And what have we got? An hour.
Don't tell him that. Don't tell him that.
Sorry.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know. That's all right. We're only a couple of minutes over, but that's it. I didn't need to do this stream to believe in Ben Jeffries and the NRLW Cowboys this season, but I'm even more of a friggin' believer now. I am so excited for this upcoming season. Congratulations on everything that you've done, and best of luck to you, Ben, for the future. The preseason, if I'm correct, kicks off May the 29th up there in Townsville.
Yep, 29th of May. The females will come in for an induction on the 28th, pretty much. Day one, 29th of May. For 7 weeks, and then straight into round one.
And then it all kicks off on Saturday, the 22nd of July, down at the Gold Coast against the Gold Coast Titans. I'll be out the door before the friggin' men's kick off. Titans and Roosters, forget about it. But I'll be there. I'll be there for the first Cowboys game for sure. Kate, thank you so much for your time this evening. It's always a pleasure to have you as my co-host. And Ben, once again, thank you so much for your time. It's been a privilege. It's been fun. I hope you've enjoyed yourself as well, man. And that's it from us. Enjoy this season. All the best of luck again, and go you Cowboys for 2023. Thank you very much, guys. Take care and adios. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.